Prior to the 18th century, there were no known literary pieces in existence that fit the definition of a novel. Traditionalism in literature was a key to success prior to the latter half of the 18th century. Authors such as Milton, who wrote Paradise Lost, were responsible for telling stories in which the people were familiar with. The fiction that was produced before the introduction and development of the novel were never based on actual people, but on characters whom everyone was familiar with: Hercules, Adam and Eve, etc. Thus, the success of an author was mainly based on whether or not he could reinvent an already popular story and model the traditional classics from the days of yore. According to Ian Watt, author of The Rise of the Novel, Studies of Defoe, Richardson and Fielding, Daniel Defoe was the first author to truly break the protocol of storytelling. Usually writers were rated on how well they represented historical events and/or their ability to retell stories that everyone had already heard. Defoe, in the 18th century, pulled away from this tendency of retelling stories and began to develop protagonist characters that were new to the literary world. Defoe began writing novel-like works about a character and their life, often using autobiographical information to fuel his writing. Author Ian Watt, and many others for that matter, usually credit Daniel Defoe as being the author of the first English novel. The first novel is usually credited to be Defoe's Robinson Crusoe, which was first published in 1719. The novel is about a man, Crusoe, who spent 28 years on a deserted island and the adventures in which he encountered while on the island. However, this is debatable, and a true first novel has not really been absolutely unanimously determined. Some critics claim that other stories, such as Swift's Gulliver's Travels, are actually just a series of stories about one character and his experiences. There is not a truly lengthy series of events that take place with one protagonist over a prolonged period of time. Rather, the character simply reenacts bits and pieces of his life that the author feels is interesting enough to reiterate. Therefore, stories like Robinson Crusoe stand up as much more likely candidates as true novels, because Defoe explains the entire life of the protagonist, even the seemingly mundane details. Thus, other novels began to be written in succession after Defoe's first. Next, there was the publication in 1740 of Samuel Richardson's Pamela, followed by a multitude of other books that would be termed novels, such as Henry Fielding's Joseph Andrews. After these first novelists became successful, a menagerie of other authors would quickly evolve in the years to come. Authors like Charles Dickens and Jane Austen, to name a few, would soon become some of the world's most famous novelists.